Man, the early money lessons, luckily, I was in a family where budgeting was kind of key. My dad was a CPA, so that definitely helped. Yeah, he definitely helped me with trying to like that mindset, like, hey, definitely invest, don't spend as much as you earn, etc. But as far as that, that's pretty much it. There wasn't any like entrepreneurs in my family for the most part, or really people that were investing heavy in real estate like I am now.
And growing up in that, having somebody who's kind of trying to put that in your mind, like save, invest, you felt like when you got on your own, you wanted to kind of rebel and get away from it? Or did you take those lessons and run with it and kind of have a naturally frugal saver mentality when you got out of the house?
I think naturally I had a frugal mentality because I remember like in a middle class family and we would never go out to eat. And I would always kind of remember that at the back of my mind. And I think that definitely, I'm thinking about it now for the first time in a long time. And I'm still kind of the same way. So I think that had a big impact on my life. So just being frugal, not having to go spend a bunch of money on dinner, not buying the fanciest cars, and being in that mindset and that family definitely helped.
But did you then flip the other way once you started getting money, once you got out of college and you started working, you're like, screw this, I'm going out to eat 5 nights a week. I got the money now. I'm buying the nice car. I'm sick of driving this minivan, or I'm sick of riding in this minivan that my parents are always whipping around. Did you kind of go the opposite way at all? Or have you always kept those frugal roots?
Man, I didn't. And I was that kid that was like at the age of 6 and 7, I would be buying basketball cards, Pokemon cards, flipping the cards in the street to sell it to the other kids. I had Just Yet Your Service, which was like toilet cleaning, house cleaning, window cleaning. I did it all. So I was that kid. I remember in second grade, I don't share this very often, but in second grade, I won like the school door knocking competition where I was selling either cookie dough or newspaper. And I got the first DVD player in my neighborhood. I remember that was such like a big moment. So no, I never really rebelled. It was just like I always had that kind of like I want to make money, but definitely didn't make very much money up and through college. But I just always kind of had that saver mentality.
That definitely hits like near and dear to me. I remember my like dad getting a call where the teachers are wondering like, was something wrong? Like, did I need money for lunch or whatever? Because like I just wasn't eating because I was just saving my money. And then I got in trouble for selling water to kids for like after football practice on the bus. The only problem was like there were water bottles I'd already drank, and I would just like refill them with the out of the
Yo,
sink and sell them to them on the bus. So
that's wild.
no, that's definitely near and dear to my heart. Always finding those things, and I think that's such a big thing. Like when you can find random opportunities and you just build that into your personality type, and you find like joy out of finding those
Mm.
opportunities. And is that something like? Do you feel like it has been this kind of like pressure burden to find ways to save money, or do you find like excitement in it?
For me, it was excitement, especially once I started making a little bit of money. I gamified it. I always had a goal, and I was like, "All right, now that I'm making a little bit of money, now it's 100K. How the heck do I save up 100K?" And then it was every like month learning to live way below my means, just live on my base salary, and throw everything else into savings to hit this 100K goal. So yeah, it's always been kind of like finding ways to make it a game for me.
And so when you do get out of college, you mentioned the word salary. So you did go into the corporate world. You got the 9 to 5 job.
Hmm.
Were you still side hustling? Did you let the side hustle dream die and you wanted to make your parents proud and just do the corporate life thing? What did that look like?
Well, guys, even before the salary, it's kind of crazy. So in high school, I got a job at 14 years old. And I graduate, 21, 22, got my college degree, and I could not find a job. And everyone said, go to school, you'll get a great job. Didn't happen for me. So I went back to the one job I knew I can get, and it was the same job I got when I was 14, which was a cabana boy. So can you just imagine like holding up that piece of paper, like, oh, I graduated, then going back to the same job? It was rough. And so when I put on that light blue cabana boy shirt that summer after I graduated, I was like, man, something's got to change. So that's where I got into Rich Dad Poor Dad, got into kind of personal development pretty quickly. And what I did was I was always someone that wanted to just follow someone else's blueprint. And I learned like copying in school, obviously, it's bad. But in life, that's the way to do it. And so that's what I did. I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and his first job was in copier sales. Literally followed that to a T. I read that book and got into copier sales. The exact same company he actually got into as well.
And what were you thinking? Like, when you went to college to get a degree, like, what were you trying to go into? Like, what was the job market you were trying to enter before you went into sales?
Man, I was all over the place. My identity was basketball. That was my first love. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna be a basketball player. I thought I was going to the NBA up till like senior season in high school. And then it got to college. I was like, man, I'm gonna ride the bench. So I better just focus on this whole, career thing. And so once that happened, even though I did a little side quest where I was ghostwriting. So I actually wrote music for artists locally, went on tour with some pretty big artists. And from there, it was just like, I don't know what I'm doing. So I really had no plan, to be honest. Once I graduated, it was like everyone said, Jesse, you could be good at sales, but I couldn't find a sales role. So I went back to the cabana and then eventually was like, all right, let's try this again. And that's when I got that job.
And once you do get that job, could you just share how much money you were bringing in exactly? And what did that look like? How did that transform your personal finances? I'm guessing you're not rolling in the dough as a cabana boy. You don't even have the opportunity to get the penthouse suite. You don't have the opportunity to get the $900 a month lease car. What did your personal finances look like when you got that first quote unquote big boy job?
Yeah, I think in the first year I made $36,000. And within the first 3 months, I almost quit 6 times. Because every single day they would say, Jesse, go knock on doors. It was almost like door to door for, residential, but it was door to door for business. Everyone would be yelling at me, slamming doors in my face. And I would do that every day, getting no traction. So it definitely started off rough, but there was that base salary of $36 or $36,000 a year.
And for those who aren't as familiar with like the kind of breakdown of the salary for a salesperson, like how leveraged were you? Like, so once you actually start making some sales, like kind of what was your upside? Like what was the percentage of your check that you feel like is coming from just that base part? But then like how much commission could you make?
Yeah, so that first year was just like try to survive off of $36,000, especially in Portland, Oregon. It's not cheap. And then that next year, $42,000 was the base salary. That's the base salary I pretty much kept most of my career. And let's see here, up until the last year, I think my top was just under 200K. So, a lot more in commissions. And that's a big point that I want to make in my story is that once I hit 42, I was like, I can comfortably live off of $42,000. And so every single dollar besides that 42, I just throw away into stocks, into investments, because I had this goal of hitting 100K. So that's what I did. I just threw everything in there.
So for most people, that's not intuitive. I love that you did this, and we hear this story, this similar pattern so much in the FI community where you kind of start to scale your income, but your expenses stay the same, and you just invest the difference. You invest the gap. How did you even know to do that? Were you reading books at this point? Were you involved with the FI community? Were you listening to podcasts? What the heck told you to, hey, I'm going to live on a fourth of my income or a fifth of my income and invest the rest?
Yeah, this is when I started diving into the FI community. I think Mad Scientist was one of the first guys I listened to. Like, come on, that's OG right there.
Yeah, he
And,
is.
after Rich Dad Poor Dad, then I also realized, okay, I need a coach. And so my first coach from after reading Rich Dad Poor Dad was a stock coach, Tyrone Jackson, who helped me, just with stock trading, a little bit of options, but mostly covered calls. And I would just be throwing a bunch of money just into Dow stocks. So yeah, for sure, it was me actually developing the mentality that I need to read and listen to podcasts. And that helped a bunch.
And I'm always curious when somebody gets deeper into FI, like, because it's not normal. It's not like an average person. What's
Mhm.
their network, how they kind of react, like friends and family. So did you start having people that it was a little bit more difficult to have a relationship with? Do people not understand what you were doing? Or do you feel like the folks that you had around you were actually pretty supportive?
Hey, great question. And environment association has always played such a big, part of my life, whether it was me younger to now. And back then, love them to death, like my best friends. But at the time, I remember my first commission check, it was like $10,000. And they said, what are we going to get? Where are we going to go? I was like, hold on, first of all, like, I made this money. But then also, I was like, I'm just putting this in savings. And to me, I think I was just I've never really been a follower. I've always been someone that, like, hey, once I make a decision, I'm going to do this. And so, yeah, I definitely was in an environment, which is the reason why I moved from Portland, Oregon to Phoenix, which we can talk about that in a bit. But it was tough. It was tough finding people who are like-minded, especially in, a city like Portland, Oregon, where it's gray skies every day. Not too many people are entrepreneurial. And that's really what I was in this bubble that I just realized I got to isolate myself. So that's what I did. Like, I had a studio apartment, and every single day I would just go back home, study, read books, learn about stocks. And that's how my journey really started early on.
And so what was your exit plan? Were you going to go the traditional save up 25x your expenses and withdraw using the 4% rule? Had you been introduced to that yet? It sounds like at this point, I know we're going to talk about real estate later on, you had just been introduced to stocks. This guy was your coach. He talked to you a little bit about covered calls, but was that the general strategy, was just save up? You need 42,000, you need a little over $1 million. Not even going to embarrass myself with that public math. Something like a million and change, and then you're just going to ride off into the sunset and quit. What was the plan there?
It was a combination of the 4% rule, but then also with covered calls, it was kind of a consistent monthly income, almost like cash flow. And so I was just like, okay, I need X amount to then make, certain number of, cash flow through covered calls. So it was definitely a mixture. It wasn't until I would say 3 or 4 years into my sales career, once I got bigger checks, that I was like, okay, it's time to, get into real estate. And I will make a point by saying, 4 years, 5 years before I got into real estate, I would tell everyone, hey, I'm going to buy a house in Arizona, because I used to come out here like every 3 months if I could, even for a day, just to get some sun and get some, just energy from the people out here in Arizona. And it was a lot of analysis paralysis for me. I think we froze.
We lost you.
Yeah, we
Am I
lost you
back?
for a second.
Am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
Yeah.
All right.
The last thing I heard was you were talking about how you would go to Arizona, like get some sun and stuff, and then like told people you're going to buy a house, and then that's kind of when it froze.
Okay. Yeah, I can start there. So I would, for like 4 or 5 years, I would tell people in Portland, hey guys, I want to live in Arizona. I'm going to buy a house. I'm going to get into real estate. And I would come out to Arizona, I would say every quarter if I could, for at least a day, just to get some sun, get around people who are more like-minded, young entrepreneurs, business professionals. And, but it was a lot of analysis paralysis. So that's kind of like the transition from that 4%, from the cover calls to, all right, it's time to, dive into real estate.
So what was the magic touch that made the lame walk? What got rid of that paralysis?
Man, it was putting pen to pad. And so many times in my life, I've had ideas, but once I write them down, it's almost like, I think Kobe Bryant said, it's like a contract with yourself, right? And so I literally put my pen to pad saying, hey, in 2021, I'm going to buy 2 houses. Did I have any idea how? No, but I was going to figure it out. And so the crazy thing was, 2 days later, actually, my mom sends me a listing. She's like, hey, this looks like a house you might like. And from there, I was like, yeah, that's a great house. Let's make an offer. 30 days later, I get my first house ever. So it just kind of like showed me, like, it's cool to have dreams and goals, but once you actually put it down and be specific about when you want it by, that was a game changer for me.
Also, shout out to moms. Like I think
Shout out to mom, yeah.
My mom also found me my first property here recently, so I just thought that was funny. Mom's helping out here.
I love that.
And the reason for the move, were you just going to live it up and have this nice, overlooking the red rocks, and you're going to be living alone with your wife and your two and a half kids and a golden retriever? Or were you going to be buying a house hack, or what was the strategy there?
So at the same time, I saw a tweet from one of my favorite influencers, and it said, life hack, move out of your hometown in your 20s. And that was another reason I'm like, all right, environment association. We all heard the quote, you're the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with the most, right? And so that was one of the reasons why I did the move. And on top of that, I said, okay, this whole house hacking thing, I just started reading about it, listening to podcasts, and I'm like, I'm all in. So I bought like a 6-bedroom house. I think it's 5 bedrooms with a detached casita, knowing that once I go to Arizona, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to live in one of the rooms and rent out all the others and put the casita on Airbnb. So I definitely had some strategy and intentionality to doing that when I got my first house.
And walk us through that first house. Like, was it a home run, or was it one of those things where things didn't turn out the way you hoped and almost maybe made you even reconsider your strategy altogether?
Yeah, no, it was actually great. And I think it was $400,000 in Phoenix, Arizona. And I think I put 10% down because I was still living in Portland. My job was still based there. And so it's kind of like a second house. And so I put the 10% down, had actually hit the number of 100K saved up, which I realize now I didn't have to do that. But I had the cash to, put down the down payment. And from there, we rented out each of the rooms for on average about $1,000 per room. And then the guest house was, let's see here, anywhere from $1,400 to $3,200 a month, just depending on the season. So
So you're
cash flow
crushing.
wise, I
Yeah.
was doing pretty well, especially the rates were around 3%. So I think I was making a couple $1,000s a month, maybe 1,500, while also living in the house. So I guess in a sense, it was kind of a home run deal for my first one, which I tell people, hey, that's not, don't wait that long for a home run. Like I wish I would have gotten into real estate 4 years ago when I said I was going to.
Everybody wishes they got in earlier. So one of the
Hmm.
biggest concerns, and we had Sam on, who's actually a buddy of yours, I think. I saw you guys post
Yeah.
together on Instagram because
He was
we
in
did a
Columbia
whole
with us
episode.
too.
Yeah, we did a whole episode about co-living with him. But the question I always like to hear the answer to, and I'm sure people are curious, is nightmare stories. I mean, you're in a
Yeah.
6-bedroom house, renting out each bedroom individually. You're having people in and out on Airbnb. There's got to be some downsides to this, right?
You would think. And I think the biggest thing has been the vetting process. That has been key for me. I've done this now for 3 years, never had any issues. The worst thing is, hey, the dishes are being left in the sink. And what we do to kind of mitigate some of these things is we have weekly cleaners. So our professional cleaners come every single Thursday and clean all the houses. So if you vet well, if you let people know, like, hey, this is a house of, career professionals, just want to make sure you're okay with that. Also, here's the house rules. And we have a whole SOP system to make sure, like you're going to be a good fit because we want you to be a good fit for us. But we want to be a good fit for you. We want to be on your head. Hey, like you left dishes in the sink and stuff like that. So yeah, I think it's just a vetting process and making sure that you're bringing people in that fit the mold of the community.
And out of curiosity, are there things you've picked up on where now you can kind of see like this is a red flag? Like when people start really digging into this question, because I know, like for instance, some people who bring on clients, if they have a client who just continues to try to like ask every little question about like how much something's going to cost, a lot of times those actually end up being the hardest clients to work with. Like as far as putting people in these rooms, what are some of the things that you've noticed? Hey, if they start really digging into this or they say this, that's probably a red flag. It's going to be a bit of a problem.
Yeah, rushing to move in, paying with cash up front. There's so many. Let's see
Yeah.
here. We actually don't even do in-person tours. All our tours are virtual. So if someone's like, I need to see it and I need to see it today, I'm like, gosh, like you sound a little high strung for our group. So it's kind of reading this body language. I'm still in a position where I don't have an assistant that does this. I still do it. So for me, I still, have these first calls. And I think something that's really cool we do with our house is if someone wants to move in, there's a process, right? So first call, application, first call, credit background check. And then we do a FaceTime with one of the roommates. So one of the roommates gives them a FaceTime tour. And then after that, the last step is, all right, now get a FaceTime call with all the roommates while they're having dinner. And I don't make the decision. The house gets to pick if they're a good
Wow,
fit.
that's cool.
So it's kind of, I
That's
haven't heard
awesome.
anyone do that. So that's kind of like our secret sauce, I guess.
Yeah, that's a cool hack. I hope some people who are doing co-living take that and write in the notepad. So while this is all happening, you move to Arizona, you get this co-living space, you're renting out a portion on Airbnb. Did you keep that same sales job from Oregon and they allowed you to just work remote from a different state, or how did that work?
Yeah, this is actually kind of funny. So I was the number one sales guy in that company at the time, and they kind of left me alone, right? They're like, Jesse's, doing well, we'll leave him alone. They didn't realize it was during COVID that I was in a whole other state. So no one at the company knew. And it kind of got to the point where it's like, all right, I have to be in the office at least twice a week for these meetings. And I was a sales mentor. And so I would catch flights like once a week just to go back for the meeting and then go
What?
back to Phoenix. Yeah, hopefully they don't listen because I don't think they still know this. But I would do that for a while. And at the same time, I'm realizing this concept that I'm creating. And we have a lot of entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs that I was intentional about. Hey, for this house that I'm living in, I want people who are, salespeople or aspiring entrepreneurs, and they would be attracted to this house. So they would come live with me. And within 6 months, I'm just realizing like, this is changing my life because now I have belief in myself that I can become an entrepreneur, which I was trying to do for the previous 5 years. And everyone else in the house is like, yeah, this is amazing. We need another house. And so what we ended up doing was calling it Growth House. And that's still our brand, and our name today. And so that's where I was like, all right, this could be something special. And that's when it was, I got another job. I was in training. This is actually a crazy story. So I was in training with this software sales job that actually allowed me to work remote, right? So I quit the copier job. I'm in this house 6 months. I'm like, this could be something special, but I'm still keeping my sales job. Software sales, I'm making good money. I got recruited and I'm 2 months into training. And as I'm 2 months into training, I'm also looking for another house. So the other house across the street says, hey, Jesse, you want to buy the house? Exact same floor plan, extra parking, which if you're doing co-living, parking is huge. They have a huge, nice pool in the backyard. And I go over to the house. I do a walkthrough. He's like, here you go. We can just do it between us, no agents, etc. I'm like, perfect. So as he gives me the verbal, I go back to the house. The next day, he goes, hey, Jesse, Open Door just reached out and I sold it to them for $20,000 more. I'm like, cool, thanks. Like, actually, I probably would have paid the extra 20 just to get that house because that would have been so convenient across the street, right? And at the same time, I'm now getting down on myself because I'm realizing I only have 2 more months to get this second house that I wrote down that I said I was gonna get 2 houses in 2021. And this will all tie into the story about how I leave corporate, which is kind of crazy. So I'm like, all right, I'll watch this show. I don't know if either of you watched it, Undercover Billionaire.
Mm-hmm.
With Grant Cardone, Monique, and one of the best shows. And I was watching it, kind of got inspired after I was down, after the guy rejected my offer to buy his house. The next day, I'm like, you know what? I used to do door to door for businesses. I've heard of wholesalers finding houses door to door. Why don't I just do door to door in my neighborhood and see if someone else wants to sell me their house? You know that time where like you don't think it all the way through and you're just like, it sounds like a good idea. Let's try it. That's where I was at. So the next Saturday, it's hot. It's Arizona. I'm like, all right, I don't want to look like a pest control. I don't want to look like a solar salesman. So I put my backwards hat on. I put like a running shirt on, and I'm just acting like I'm going for a jog in the neighborhood. I'm knocking on every single door. I'm like, hey guys, I'm your neighbor. This is my script. I'm your neighbor. So someone's renting my house. So I kind of got kicked out. I don't have a place to stay, but I love the neighborhood. Is there any chance that you're looking to sell your house? No, but good to meet you. And I do this all day long until the very end. It's now the sun is setting. There's this house across from the park. And I just said, all right, last one. Knock on the door, sweetest Jamaican couple. They're like, Jesse, it's great to meet you, but we are renters. I'm like, all right. But then they say, as they're closing the door, we just bought a house. I'm like, oh, so can I talk to the owner of this house? They say, sure. They give me the contact. I talk to my agent. We make an offer that same day. 30 days later, we now got into that house. So that's how I bought my second house.
Wow. Really putting those goals down on the notepad seems to be working out for you, Jesse. Kobe Bryant method.
It was huge, man. So that's how I got that second house. And at the same time, I'm now creating this concept of growth house. And I'm now remodeling that second house. I'm telling people, hey, we're going to do these entrepreneur houses out here in Arizona. And so, like I said, I got kicked out of the house because I had someone else rent the last bedroom. So I immediately moved into the second house. While it was all being remodeled, I slept in the kitchen for a month. At the same time, I had the first person, Derek McMonigal, it's my guy, my best friend to this day. He says, hey, Jesse, I see your ad on Facebook talking about, this house that you have. Can I come check it out? I said, sure. He comes to the house. I'm excited because I have the vision in my head, but it looks like a mess because everything, my bed is in the kitchen. He goes, Jesse, why is your bed in the kitchen? I'm like, no, don't worry about that. This is the vision of, what we're creating. So he puts his hands on his hips. He says, I'm in. And so that's exactly how like Growth House, the first member, whoever came into our house started. And at the same time, going back to corporate, I now have the house. And a week later, after I close, I get an email from HR. I've never been fired in my life. I don't know that HR is usually not a good, look when you get an email from HR. I was the top sales guy. So I'm going in like, oh, cool. They're probably going to promote me. So I go into this call with HR, super oblivious to what's going on. They say, we got to cut your team in half. I said, guys, I haven't even been on the team because I'm still in training. It was my last month in training. They said, sorry, Jesse, we want you to try this lower role that has more availability and you can get the lower role and continue a career with us. So I said, okay, fine. Another thing I want to mention with the goals, for whatever reason, I put down February of 2022, I want to quit corporate. So I have all these goals, right? And I have no idea how I'm going to accomplish them. And so I go back to the manager of the slightly lower sales division. We have a talk. It's not going well. She's asking me all these questions. I'm like, guys, I got the job above you. Like, you should like be excited. Like, I'm willing to join your team. At the very end, they're trying to big dog me and say, Jesse, We're not sure about you. Sell yourself to us. I'm just like, man, I understand it. I'm in sales. So like I get the question, but for whatever reason, it hit me the wrong way. I said, hey guys, can you remind me what the salary is for this position? They say it's like 80 something K. I'm like, okay, you know what? We're done. I'm not selling myself because you guys can't afford me. Exactly how I left corporate America.
Just mic dropped on them.
And
And what was
here's the funniest part of that is that I had one more month. And so actually, this is even crazier. So I go back to HR. I say, hey, I really love your company. Just didn't really vibe with that manager. You mentioned something about a severance package. They're like, yeah. So according to the severance package, based on the months, we're going to stop paying you February of 2022. And at that point, I just looked up. I was like, God, all right, I'm listening to you this time. Let's do this.
So you bought your first property in 2021. You bought the
Mhm.
second property also in 2021, I believe. And then you
Like
quit
8,
in
9 months later.
2022 in February?
Yep.
Wow. We've had some pretty
Crazy.
fast tracks to FI, but this one might take the cake. When was the first property in 2021? What month?
I think February 1st or 2nd is when I got it.
Okay, so it was exactly 1 year pretty much.
Yeah.
From that first property to quitting the corporate job. That's insanity. Can you give us a financial snapshot? So it sounds like the second house is under construction. The first house, while you were
Mhm.
living there, was spitting out about $1,500 a month in cash flow. So maybe
Yeah.
$2,500, maybe $2,000 after you left. What did the personal finances look like? What were you bringing in from these two houses? And if you had any other side hustles going on, what did your daily expenses look like? Just want to give people
Yeah.
the real, the real numbers behind what gave you the confidence to quit your job a year after kind of starting this journey with real estate.
Absolutely. Yeah, let's dive in. Let's get into the numbers. This is what I
Oh, you're
like.
looking at a spreadsheet. I like it. We like
Oh, come on
spreadsheet
now.
guys.
So essentially, once I moved out of that first house, each bedroom was $1,000 and the master was $1,250. So that would be 4,000 plus 1,250. And then additionally, it was anywhere from 1,500 for like a couple months up to 3,200 for the casita. So when I was doing it, I said $2,000 is kind of average for the casita, which is a hack. If you ever buy a house and there's a detached unit, mother-in-law suite with a private entrance, I always try to look for that. So you're adding those numbers up, 4, 5, 6, 7. You're looking at 7,250 for the rental income from that first house. Mortgage plus co-living expenses. Like I said, we do weekly cleaners, we pay for utilities, we pay for Wi-Fi, that type of stuff. All in, that equals 3,500. So if you're doing the math, you're looking at
So I was way off. It was like 1,000 more than I said.
It's around $4,000. Your net is
Wow.
$4,000. So at that time, I'm like, all right, this first house is giving me about $4,000. In the second house, we actually added another bedroom, so it's another $1,000 on top of that. Also, I did the exact same floor plan, so I knew exactly what I was going to get. It had a detached casita outside. It had the same, literally, if you walked in the house, you're like, it's the same exact house, just different paint color. So all in all, it was, $7,000 of net cash flow that I was getting, and comparing it to the base salary, I'm like, you guys can't afford me. I'm making just as much as you were going to pay me anyways. Yes, I'm not going to make the commissions, but that kind of gave me the confidence, like, okay, I can do this. Let's, take a step forward.
So 1 year into this journey, you're making like 100 plus grand in very passive income. I mean, that's awesome. And it's obviously, like you said, you'd already shown where, hey, I can live off the $42,000 base salary. So you've got enough money to not only be living off of, but you can continue to look for more properties. I mean, that's huge. One thing I'm really curious about, just before we get too far past it, especially in these early days, like as you're thinking about building this is not just co-living. It's not just like throw whoever in. Like you're trying to build something that's got a little bit of a brand to a little bit of a style to it. You mentioned
Mm-hmm.
a Facebook ad. Like, how did that marketing go? Like, how were you targeting specific personas and attracting that certain persona?
Great question. So at first, it was going fine. And then Facebook started flagging me. They're like, you can't do that, especially on public if you like promote it. So yeah, for whatever reason, I didn't know all this back then. And also when I was house hacking, I was living in the house. You're actually able to determine like exactly, hey, these are the people I want to live with because I'm still living there. But as far as on Facebook, I just said, I basically described who was already in the house. So I didn't say, hey, we're looking for entrepreneurs. I said, we have, 5 roommates, career focused, um, 3 of them have small businesses, stuff like that, where I kind of like people pick up on that language and they would be like, oh man, I'm attracted to that. I want to ask more. So that's how we did in the beginning. Eventually I got banned from Facebook, which is kind of a funny story, but eventually Facebook was like, all right, we're shutting this down. So then I had to move to Facebook groups. And there you can like say, hey, this is what we're looking to create. But obviously Facebook's heavily regulated. So we got to make sure to not, say anything really. Like I couldn't even say anything by the time they kicked me out. So that's kind of how we did it. And then also Craigslist, surprisingly, we had someone that reached out to us from France and he joined the house, which was awesome. And then I just started recruiting. I went to ASU, which is a college out here. I'm like, all right, who's all the grant winners, who's all the pitch competition winners, and I'm going to reach out to them and recruit them to the house. And that's what we did. We had Jaron Lodge, who has a company called Skip and Hole. It's basically cornhole, but skipping stones and targets in the water. So his company won a bunch of grants, and then he got invited to go on Shark Tank. He actually never ended up going on the show, but he had a business that was in 500 different Dick's Sporting Goods. And this year he's going to cross $1 million of revenue. So it's kind of cool to have these people that we were able to kind of recruit, and then word of mouth started spreading to help us attract the right people for the houses.
So it's easy to see when someone is a master networker. I mean, even just the idea of Growth House, like Justin said, it's kind of a novel concept. I know there's been like the YouTuber groups. I know like Logan Paul had his whole creator house, and that's how a lot of those guys blew up. But this idea, this thing is not a common thing where you try to get a bunch of like-minded people together. I mean, that's why Justin and I started the podcast, but it's a little bit more virtual. So I want you to open up and share whatever you can from your networking playbook because before we hit go here, we're just chatting. We're like, oh, you got any plans for the year? You're like, oh yeah, I'm going to Europe for 3 months with Brian Lubin. I actually met him on a 3-month trip down in Mexico. I was like, what? You just met him down in Mexico? We run in the same circles? Like, so that's a very long-winded way of asking, what is your playbook for networking? Like, how do you get connected with these people who are starting these companies that are potentially going on Shark Tank and doing $1 million in revenue? Like, what are the questions you ask? What are the things you do to get in the doors of the right people?
Yeah, it's funny. So many people are reaching out now and asking me this question, especially now that I have a podcast. And so we're actually doing a series called The Art of Connecting. So it's where I share stories about how I meet people. And maybe I'll share one about you, Cody, how we connected over Instagram and I listened to your podcast. That'd be kind of fun. But as far as, even I guess I'll just share the Brian story because I think this puts everything in perspective. And you just got to be willing to say yes. And I think that's a big thing. And also, I think even before that, I reach out to people that I think I'll connect with and I'll like. And in return, they're probably going to like me if we have, certain things that are in common. And so with Brian, I listened to his podcast at the beginning of 2023. And I was like, this is awesome. I love the guests he has on. I relate to his story. He was in corporate sales as well. He quit. I quit. So I'm like, all right, this is someone that I can resonate with and I think I'll like. And so I ended up, reaching out on Instagram. We started DMing back and forth a little bit. Not much. I was just like shouting him out. He just said, thanks, like nothing crazy. And then a whole year goes by of me kind of reposting his stories and saying, hey, this is one of my favorite episodes of the year for podcasts. And this is November of 2023. So not that long ago. He posts a story that says going to Colombia for a couple of weeks. I think that was it. And so I was like, I'm going to respond to that story. And so I hit him up. I was like, dude, you're going to Colombia? When are you going? And he told me the dates. And my business coach literally the day before was like, Jesse, no more traveling. And so I said, Brian, I think I'm going to be in Colombia the same dates. And so he reaches
Just
back out and says,
Conveniently.
I was supposed to not travel at all. And so Brian reaches out. He goes, maybe down here. I'm like, oh, okay. so I said, some of your, like where you're staying. And he's like, Poblado, that area. I said, cool. I booked the hotel, the flight, like the next day, and literally went down there, not knowing him. Obviously, he didn't know me. He even called me before. He's like, bro, we don't really know each other. I'm like, trust me, we'll have fun. And so that ended up happening and met him down there. We spent 3 weeks in Medellin, Christmas, New Year's together. At the same time, which is really cool, another person on my bucket list that I wanted to connect with on a deeper level was the co-living king, which is Sam Wiegert. He hits us up while we're out there for a week. He DMs me and says, Jesse, I see you're out there in Medellin. How long are you out there for? I'm like, probably another week. He says, I'll see you in 2 days. So the two guys I wanted to connect with, hang out with, we spent Christmas together. Like, wild. But that's just like, that might sound like a crazy story, but I have so many of these stories. If you just put yourself in a position, either meet people where they are. So, for us, if we want to network, where do we go? Masterminds, conferences, get on social media. I just talked about this yesterday on a podcast, 2 hacks: host your own events, become that connector for people. And then also start a podcast, host events, start a podcast. Like, it's an easy way to get in the door and kind of do a follow-up. Because I think for me, a lot of people maybe meet someone in passing at a conference, but no one follows up, and no one's going to remember you if you don't follow up. So, I mean, that was just kind of a couple things. I don't know where you want to go with that.
Well, I definitely agree that like a huge part about all kinds of opportunities is just being flexible and saying yes and just putting yourself out there and giving it a shot. But the other thing that I think sometimes we overlook is that you had built a life that allowed you to do so, that allowed you the flexibility and allowed you to say yes. And I know that's something that's always important to me is like, I want to be able to, like, if somebody reaches out and says, hey, you want to do this? It takes me 5 seconds to look at my calendar and I can say yes or no. Like, I don't want to have to do a bunch of coordination and asking permissions and all this sort of stuff, like, or stressing about like, how can I come up with the money? Like, I always want to be in a position to say yes. And so I think that's what's really cool is not only do you have the mindset to say yes, but you've done the work to put yourself in the position to say yes.
For sure. And even back when I was in corporate, I set aside like a couple $1,000s. I hired a coach, like I said, the stock coach. And then once I was like, all right, now I want to focus on real estate, I hired a real estate and sales coach. And from there, I also had a separate amount that I saved for masterminds, for networking. And I think a lot of people like try to just stay on the surface level of like, oh, I'll go to the local, meetup, local network. All right, guys, you guys pass business cards back and forth and no one can really help each other out, like in most of those circles. But if you actually pay to get in rooms where they have an elevated, success level, those are the rooms you want to be in. And I've always been a huge proponent of spending my money on things that either memories or things that will help me get better. Like, I've never been a car guy. Like, I still rock my Honda Civic. I spend my money on vacations and I spend my money on masterminds to better myself and also my business.
We are 3 of the same. I think
Yes,
Justin
sir.
and I are both in agreement, and you've listened to the podcast before, that if you can just cut down on the housing and transportation, you can spend so much in the fun categories, the experiences, the travel, concerts, food, all the iconic stuff that you're going to remember for a long time. You're not going to remember. Maybe you will if you're a car guy, if you love having a mansion, but most people aren't. So you're probably not going to be thinking about that every day. Oh man, I'm so glad I bought that. I bought that pickup truck for $90,000 and I have a $1,100 a month payment. Oh my God, it's amazing. Most people, it doesn't bring them that much joy compared to a vacation with friends or going to some amazing concert or some event. One thing I'm curious
Here's the
about.
crazy thing.
Yeah.
I was going to say, like, once you get to a certain level and you surround yourself with these people who are super successful, then they give you the keys to the Ferrari. You want to go test drive it? Like, cool. I've always wanted to drive a Ferrari. Or even like for us, for our mastermind that's coming up in the end of May, every mastermind I do, I'm like, I'm going to rent a mansion. So those are like the experiences, like, you don't have to go buy it yourself. If you create a community or you have a business, then it's a part of a business expense. So I still get feel bougie every once in a while. It's not like I'm just living below my needs, rice and beans every single day. I do splurge, but it's for a reason. And I don't know if you guys want to get into it, but I actually did kind of like a market example, because I think a lot of people are going to say, Jesse, like, you can't get that cash flow these days. 100% you can, maybe not to the extreme. So if you guys want, we can dive into like an example of around here where you can make $2,000 off a property.
If you're telling us that you're going to whip out your spreadsheet and show us some numbers, Jesse, we are game. Let's hear it.
Let's do it. All right. So I just kind of made this yesterday, and it's a breakdown of what you can get in Phoenix or Tempe, which are great spots here in Arizona. So $500,000 house, down payment, 5% down, you're looking at $25,000, right? And for most people, they're just starting off, you want a house hack. get into the house, like you just said, lower your travel and lower your housing expenses. So boom, house hack it, you live in it for at least 1 year, it becomes your primary residence. That's why you're able to do 3 to 5% down. With a house that's $500,000, you're probably going to want to add a bedroom or bathroom or two, and that's going to give you kind of the bigger house, the more bedrooms, the more cash flow you can bring in. So I put down $30,000 for a remodel, which is what I typically do. All in, you're looking at 55K down. And that's either money you have saved up like I did. I spent, 3-4 years stacking everything away, or you can find private money, something that I had no idea even existed. And then if you do it at a 7.75 rate, kind of what we're at right now, 30-year fixed, all in, that looks like 40/50. So 40/50 is your PITI plus $1,200 of co-living expenses. That's utilities that you pay for. That's maybe some toiletries. That is, Wi-Fi, etc. And so you're looking at $5,250 in monthly expenses. And what is this house going to look like? This house is going to look like a 6'3" because you're going to add a couple bedrooms. And in here in Arizona, I don't know what it's like across the country, you can turn a carport into this casita that I'm talking about. It's way less expensive. It's not like you're buying a whole new ADU or, creating one from the ground up. So I went really conservative. I said $1,000 a room. The master bedroom's obviously more. Let's say you do $950. Overall, it'll average out to about $1,000 a room. So you're looking at $6,000 for the room, for the house itself, and then $1,200 for the casita. I literally just did this with my business partner. So this is not like Jesse making this up. Like we do this. So you're looking at $7,200 minus the $5,250 of the expenses. Net cash flow is $1,950. Guys, this is still possible. I have so many people reach out and say, Jesse, it's not possible now. Yes, it is. Go back and listen to this. Like, I don't know if you guys have done co-living before, but for me, Airbnb is awesome. I think maybe you can make the most, but it's seasonal. So it's up and down. For co-living, you get people to sign 6-12 month leases. This is like high income, plus it's very consistent.
I have
that's an
honestly.
awesome. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, you can go, Justin.
I was just gonna say that's an awesome real world breakdown. I love the fact that we were able to like step completely through it, and it's like a specific market. I mean, yes, not everyone is maybe buying in Phoenix or Tempe, but to me, those are the kind of examples that you can really feel real. It's not just like, okay, let's say there's a house for this much. Like this is a house you're actually looking at. So I really appreciate you bringing those numbers. And I mean, a $2,000 a month return on $55,000 is just amazing leverage, which is just that power of real estate again.
So
true.
in terms of systems and processes, Jesse, because this is honestly the reason I've strayed away from it. I have Airbnbs, I have long-term rentals, I've done some co-management stuff. I'm scared of co-living because I think it's going to be a lot of management headache. You're doing this and going to different places around the world for 3 months at a time. You must have pretty good systems set up. So when something goes wrong, what do you do? When you're getting a new person in there, what do you do? Because it sounds like the FaceTime thing is really cool, but I'm guessing one of your renters isn't, fielding inquiries for new potential renters. I'm guessing your renters aren't calling the maintenance guys. Maybe they are, I'm not sure. But what systems do you have set up that just makes this thing run on autopilot for you?
It's pretty simple. If you have one or two maintenance guys, you have a backup cleaner, you have people in the house, which maybe it's just the ability that I've like facilitated or curated this environment where people actually want to help. And I think also that's what I look for. When we hop on calls with people, I want them to stay as long as they want. And then once they move out of our community, I want to help them go buy a house. And I think I say that on my very first call. So they have a deeper kind of love for our community. And in return, they're excited to move in. Like if you see my text from people saying like, I'm so excited, I got accepted. Like, Jesse, I appreciate you so much. At the end of the day, they're paying my rent, right? Or they're paying my mortgage down. But if you create an environment and just make sure you do right by these people. Like, I want this house to be spotless. Like, if you walked into any of our houses, you'd be like, people live here. Like, it's so clean. Everything's new. So it's hard to say, like, I have these incredible, like, SOPs. We do have them. But at the end of the day, like, I have someone today that one of our blinds broke in the bathroom. And I was like, is anyone handyman? Like, does anyone do handyman stuff? And the guy was like, yeah, bro, I'll do it right now. I'm looking on Home Depot to fix the blinds. I'm like, love you, bro. Just send me however much you pay for it. I'll pay you $75 to put this little tiny, blinds in our bathroom. So I think that's the thing, is just really fostering a community of people who are positive, want to help.
And so it sounds like, even though maybe it's not the most complicated system in the world, like you do have, you understand the market, you understand this type of system. Where do you see it going from here? Like, are you like, I want 10 of these things, or like, where do you kind of want to go next with this?
Yeah. So for Growth House Living, which is the rentals, our vision there is 2 to 3 of these in each major entrepreneurial city. So we want this to be the plug and play for aspiring entrepreneurs or just people who already started their business. We remember, like, that's probably why you guys started the podcast. It's a lonely journey. This, like, the journey of entrepreneurship, I'm surrounded by it, so I'm naive to how many people don't think like us. Like, it's not until I step away I'm like, wow, this is not normal how we operate and think. And so for me, it's creating this environment where every single major city has these houses, and Arizona will always be our main hub. We'll have a flagship mansion here probably end of next year, and then have 4 or 5 here. But that's the goal, is to have that place where people could come, plug and play. You have a community, you have access to capital through the Growth House Network, potentially looking to start a fund to then also be a angel investor or seed round or pre-seed for these startups as well. And we've already gotten approached by Hollywood, which was kind of weird, through my network. So I was in Puerto Rico and I got a call. Hey, my friend who lives in Beverly Hills, and she's like, I have a producer that you need to meet. She wants to do a TV show on Growth House. So I fly out there. I don't know this world, guys. I was so confused. I was like, oh, this is fancy. And we sat down, and she was trying to take it like a completely different direction. She wanted to be like Jersey Shore, Big Brother. I'm like, that's not the drama we want in these houses. We want business drama. So at that time, I said, all right, we're going to pause this, but I appreciate it. But it did, make the idea happen that, hey, we can do this as a YouTube show. And so that's something that we're looking to do early 2025, is how do we make this media team, but also production, to help these people that are in our houses that have businesses and spotlight them.
Are y'all bringing one of these to Austin?
Absolutely, man.
Man,
Austin's
it's
probably
entrepreneur city.
I know, right? Austin's incredible. I have so many friends out there. Is that where you are, Justin?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, perfect. Well, yes. Cody,
Along
where are
with
you? You're in
Tim Ferriss
Massachusetts or something, right?
I'm in Massachusetts. Yeah, you have to have the
Yeah.
Boston group launch soon.
Make it happen.
Oh yeah. Well, before we bring this thing to a close, Jesse, I know you have a lot going on with Growth House. Not only do you have literal houses that people are joining, and it's kind of like the Logan Paul creator house model. You're potentially investing in some of these startups, which is really cool. You also have this podcast. You have an entire brand around it. Where do you want to point people? Where can people learn more about Growth House who maybe aren't in the Phoenix, Tempe area? Where do you want to send our listeners?
Yeah, I think I'm most active on Instagram. So the Jesse Ray, TheJessesseRay. Super active on there, answer all my DMs. And then also the podcast is Growth House Podcast. And we talk all about networking, relationships. And I think I might have stole this idea from you, Cody. I thought it was Brian, but I think it was you, where I am having amazing guests on our show twice a week. But in addition to that, I'm doing 2 solo episodes every single week, where I am documenting the journey of building Growth House from $0 to $10 million. So that's kind of a fun thing. I share revenue, I share everything, learning lessons. I had an event that went horrible. I shared about that. Like, I'm just an open book. And I think most people aren't transparent. And so for me, I want to be that person that's like, hey guys, this is what it really looks like. And follow along with the journey. If you want to be a part of it, let's be a part of it as well.
Well, Jesse, thank you so much for giving us some time. It's really cool. Like Cody mentioned earlier in the episode, we've had people on talking about co-living, but this is such a different style, and I really love the fact that it's got a real purpose to it. So that's really cool. Appreciate the time, and if you ever find yourself in Austin, hit me up.
Appreciate that, Justin. And I just want to say, this is a big time full circle moment. Guys, I was in my cubicle before I had real estate, before I even knew anything. I was listening to shows like you guys. And this is the type of stuff, when you don't have that environment and association around you, plug into this. Like, I had to daily listen to podcasts because I had so many other people, naysayers, haters, whatever you want to call them. But no one, not too many people think like us. So I had to constantly be plugged in. And I wanted to say, you guys are one of the reasons why I'm able to do what I do now. So I just want to say thank you.
Well, thank you, Jesse, because that is why we do what we do. That just lights me up. It makes me know that I'm doing the right thing, that these 275 plus episodes have not gone to waste. So appreciate you, man. Thank you.
Absolutely.